This week, Patreon supporter EnderPigman9 has sponsored an episode that a lot of you have been waiting for. These are the basics on the most famous female Autobot there is, ARCEE. The character of ARCEE was created for 1986's The Transformers the Movie, but much of her history is tied up in the larger story of how the Transformers franchise has handled the concept of female Transformers in general over the years. Before ARCEE, Hasbro hadn't included any female Transformer characters in the franchise, believing that their primary audience of young boys wouldn't want toys of girls. But in early 1985, the movie's scriptwriter Ron Friedman successfully argued for the addition of a female Autobot to the film on the basis that his own daughter was a fan. A character design was created for ARCEE by artist Floro Deary, complete with robotic hair buns based on Star Wars Princess Leia and a futuristic sports car alternate mode, and a toy prototype was developed based on it. But in the end, Hasbro's reluctance won out, and the figure didn't go into production, leaving ARCEE the only new Autobot introduced in the movie without a toy. Still, her inclusion in the film at all was a victory, and off the back of her creation, other female Autobots were added into the animated series before the film hit theaters. Characterized as a kind and quick-witted Autobot warrior whose skill and ferocity were often underestimated by the Decepticons due to her gender, ARCEE was introduced in the movie as both a motherly protector to young human Daniel Witwicky and a romantic foil for fellow Autobot Hot Rod.
Stay close to me, Daniel!
And you better stay close to me!
No, you'd better stay close to me.
After the film, she continued to appear in the third season of the Transformers cartoon, but the show changed things up and depicted her in a relationship with Springer. Notable adventures for ARCEE in the series included joining Springer to hunt down the alien mercenary the Skuxoid, having her mind transplanted into a synthetic human body, and in the series finale, The Rebirth, saving a fatally injured Daniel's life by binary bonding with him to become a headmaster, with Daniel now transforming into her head. Artwork exists of a proposed Headmaster ARCEE toy, but like the original figure, it was also never released. Now, The Rebirth wasn't aired in Japan. Instead, an entirely different sequel series was produced for the Japanese market, Transformers: The Headmasters, in which ARCEE appeared regularly. She didn't undergo the Headmaster upgrade in this series. In fact, rather than the warrior seen in the American cartoon, this show depicted her as little more than the Autobots' administrative assistant, who also served as a nanny for Daniel and the young Autobot Wheelie. Plus, she gained a new romantic admirer in Chrome Dome. ARCEE didn't appear in the Marvel comic published in the United States, but this left her open to star in the exclusive additional stories written for the United Kingdom's version of the series. Soon after ARCEE made her debut in the UK comic, however, the American series ran a story which stated that in the comic's continuity, the Transformer race didn't have a concept of gender. This prompted British writer Simon Furman to pen a story for the UK series justifying the explicitly female ARCEE's existence. And the result was a pretty cringeworthy issue revealing that the Autobots had built ARCEE to appease the demands of a mob of straw feminists complaining about the lack of female Transformers. Even though she lacked a toy, ARCEE's role as the most prominent female Transformer in the original series made her a memorable and popular character, and in later years, non-transforming merchandise of her like model kits and figurines would eventually be produced. Meanwhile, her voice actress, Susan Blue, continued to work on the Transformers franchise for over 2 decades as the director of various new animated series, including Beast Wars, which in 1998 revealed a surprising connection between ARCEE and the Maximal Rat Trap.
What in the name of my great Aunt ARCEE is going on here?
Still, the lack of a true transforming ARCEE toy was keenly felt by fans, and calls for one to be made were common at official convention BotCon every year. leading to the convention itself meeting the demand by releasing the first official ARCEE toy in 2001. A recolor of Beast Wars Transmetal 2 Black Arachnia, the figure transformed into a biomechanical spider and represented a future version of ARCEE who had cut herself off from the world after the death of Daniel. Now, obviously, this figure didn't exactly fulfill fans' desire for a toy based on ARCEE's original design. For that, they would still have to wait for many years. But that didn't mean that ARCEE went ignored during that time. You see, one side effect of being the most famous female Transformer is that for much of her history, ARCEE has been primarily defined by her gender. For the first decade of the 21st century, she served as the default go-to character used by new Transformers series for female representation, beginning with 2004's Transformers Energon. Energon ARCEE was one of the Omnicons, a race of Transformers with the power to manipulate Energon, and she transformed into a motorcycle, which would become the standard alternate mode for the character for much of the next decade. As seen in the Energon cartoon, ARCEE was created when a lone Omnicon was mutated by the power of Energon into a leader and idol that the rest of her race could rally around. Later pieces of Japanese media saw Energon ARCEE join the interdimensional defenders known as the Protectors, and upgrade into several new bodies, including a synthetic human form. ARCEE was considered for inclusion in the first live-action Transformers movie in 2007, but was dropped because the writers, like Simon Furman before them, believed that they would have to justify the existence of a female robot. Regardless, a figure of this ARCEE was released in the movie toy line, and she appeared in tie-in comic books as the leader of a group of Autobots attempting to thwart Starscream's plans to create a replica of the life-giving Allspark. ARCEE would be featured in the 2009 sequel Revenge of the Fallen, in which she appeared as a tripartite robot, one mind controlling 3 bodies. No explanation for her gender was deemed necessary, but comic books did explain her change in form, revealing that she had been the victim of Decepticon experimentation, which had fused her and her sisters, Chromia and Elita 1, into a single being. 2008 marked ARCEE's introduction into IDW Publishing's Transformers comic books, a very different, violent incarnation of the character who hailed from Cybertron's distant past, twin sibling of the barbarian Galvatron. The IDW universe was developed by Simon Furman, and initially followed the same rules as the Marvel comic, depicting ARCEE as the only female Transformer who was specially created under unique circumstances. Except here, she was a victim of the mad scientist Giaxus, who had, essentially, subjected a Transformer to a forced sex reassignment as an experiment into introducing gender to the Cybertronian race. In later years, however, the need to introduce new female characters into the universe saw new writers, who didn't share Furman's hang-ups around the concept of Transformer gender, reveal that female Transformers did exist naturally in the comics universe, and rewrote ARCEE to be an authentically transgender Cybertronian, forged male, who had willingly allowed Giaxus to experiment on her in hopes of becoming her true self. Left unstable by Giaxus's careless ministrations, she became a terrifying warrior, famed and feared for her murderous rampages. After helping the Autobots fight the menace of the dead universe, she worked as a secret peacekeeping enforcer for Prowl, then served as a key member of Optimus Prime's Autobot unit on Earth, becoming one of the most significant characters in the later years of IDW's comics. Her past made it difficult for ARCEE to form relationships with others, with the few bots she did manage to befriend meeting tragic fates in battle, until at last she was able to find the peace and contentment she had so long been searching for in the arms of the idealistic Aileron. Also in 2008, Susan Blue returned to voice ARCEE for the Transformers animated cartoon, with a toy of the character following a few years later in 2010, armed with twin energy swords inspired by the IDW character. Animated ARCEE was a former teacher turned intelligence agent who was left amnesiac after she had medic Ratchet wipe her mind in order to prevent the Decepticons acquiring the access code she was carrying for Autobot's superweapon Omega Supreme. The Decepticons later abducted her to try and pull the codes from her damaged mind, but she was rescued and had her memories restored by Ratchet and Sari Sumdak. One of ARCEE's biggest modern roles came in 2010's Transformers Prime, in which she was a main cast member, tough, fast, sharp-witted and sharp-tongued, with formidable hand-to-hand combat skills. Long ago traumatized by the death of her partner Tailgate at the hands of the Decepticon Arachnid, this ARCEE ran solo for many years, refusing to allow anyone else into her life, until she met the cocky Cliffjumper, with whom she escaped Decepticon captivity and came to Earth. Sadly, Cliffjumper would later be killed by Starscream, and ARCEE might have fallen back into her old ways, had Optimus Prime not charged her with protecting human Jack Darby. The series would follow ARCEE's adventures as she and Jack learned to work together as partners and friends, and saw her finally lay her demons to rest when she got the chance to settle the score with Arachnid. 2014 was a turning point for ARCEE. As part of the franchise's 30th anniversary celebration, a brand new toy based on her original Generation 1 design was at last released in the Transformers Generations line. This year also marked the beginning of a push to add new, more prominent female Transformers to the brand. And in the years since, with more girls around, ARCEE has no longer had to function as the default female character for new series. These days, the female face of Transformers is usually Windblade, while ARCEE continues to feature in new toy lines and media, now as just a regular cast member, with appearances including a Headmaster ARCEE figure in the Titans Return toy line in 2017, her head formed by the Titan Master Leynad, that's Daniel spelled backwards, a cameo in the Bumblebee movie, Transformers Cyberverse, in which she's characterized as an adventurer who loves taking selfies and firing huge guns, and IDW's new rebooted comic book universe, in which she serves as mentor to newly forged young Transformer Gage, alongside her partner Greenlight. Even more new figures based on ARCEE's original design are also on their way in 2020 as part of both the War for Cybertron Earthrise and Transformers Masterpiece toy lines, proving just how much things have changed since the days when it felt like getting even one toy of ARCEE was a fan's impossible dream. And those are the basics on ARCEE. Thanks to Ender Pigman for sponsoring this episode. Tell me about your favourite incarnation of ARCEE down in the comments. If you've enjoyed, like and subscribe for more history and lore from the world of the Transformers, and consider supporting the series on Patreon for a future chance to sponsor an episode of your own.